Mr. Birch, do the pledge as clerk. I'd like to call to order this assembly meeting and begin with a roll call.
Mr. Birch.
Here.
Mr. Flynn. Present. Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Osiander.
Here.
Ms. Gert Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Homan.
Here.
Mr. Trainee.
Here.
And Ms. Drummond.
Somebody needs to fix the microphone. One's not down here, and I'm sure I'm loud.
And I'm here.
Uh-oh. Is this a sign Mr. Honeman had two microphones?
One to each side. We know who has the louder voice, Madam Chair.
So you're
All right.
Democrat or Republican?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Right in the
Thank
middle.
you. Mr. Birch, would you lead us in the pledge?
Be my pleasure.
Mr. Mayor, do you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. We, as you know, last week conducted our Energy Watch drill for the third year, and results are trickling in, but it looks like similar results from the past years, several percentage points varying on where location was of people participating. And then NSTAR is actually conducting a poll of their customers to find out what the results were, and I think 24% said they participated, but we would have had a lot higher number if that was true, I think. But so far, just our continued efforts to make sure the public is aware that on a cold winter night, we could call on them to maybe help save the deliverability of the gas system. So third year, and we think it probably went pretty well. The AFN convention concluded on Saturday. We had a tremendous convention. By all measures, it was a great success for the participants and certainly for the merchants and the city as a whole. Almost, or I think maybe over 5,000 delegates in total. I had the opportunity to speak to the Elders and Youth Conference and to the main AFN delegates, and was honored to do so. And finally, we had our first planning meeting this week for the 100th anniversary of the city of Anchorage, which in 1915 was when we were formally incorporated, I believe. So in 2015, it'll be the 100th anniversary, and folks from the museum and the Cook Inlet Historical Society, Jim Barnett and others are starting to make plans to make sure that it really is a significant event, and certainly will be participating. And you may want to designate somebody, Madam Chair, from the Assembly to sit in on our working groups and participate. That's it.
Mr. Mayor, do you include Matanuska Electric Association in that Energy Watch?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Kenai and Matsu were both participants.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The only report I have is to mention that we are having our quarterly meeting with the Matsu Assembly, and it will be this Thursday, 3:30 to 5 at the Eagle River Town Center. And if you're interested on the agenda, it should have been sent to everybody. The other thing is we're anticipating that the legislative program, which is an item on the addendum, will probably not be voted on tonight. The mayor had some small changes he wanted to make, and he's asking that if you have amendments that you'd like to make to that you submit them to Ms. Frasca for consideration in the S version they're preparing. That's all I have. Committee reports. Ms. Drummond, starting with you.
No committee report, just to mention that I and several other Assembly members took a 2-hour tour of the People Mover system yesterday afternoon, and we learned a ton. We went through everything except the car wash at the maintenance barns, and really learned a lot about our system and the improvements that have been made, and the amount of ridership. I'm just stuffed full of statistics. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Trainee?
Nothing, ma'am.
Mr. Honeman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a Public Safety Committee meeting a couple weeks back, and really good information with the help of the Chief and Ms. Tucker. We worked through very good information with several of the tow operators in town, and I believe we'll be coming forth with a proposal fairly soon, and we're working on some percentages of what that may look like. So we'll keep the body informed here on that, and it was a very good turnout. Also, was there with my two colleagues on the People Mover ride, and it's been many years since I worked there, but some improvements have definitely been made, particularly in the buses, newer buses, new technology is really interesting. And I was at AFN for several days, and happy to report as one of the members on the Veterans and Military Affairs liaison for the Assembly was at a town hall meeting conducted by Senator Begich, along with Senator Murkowski, Deputy Secretary for External Affairs John Garcia was in town, the VA, and it was a standing room only, a crowd, several hours, and so lots of information exchanged, lots of concerns, and so I'm happy to report the municipality was in our Assembly was in present and recognized as being there, so it was very good. And lastly, at the AFN, there's a young lady that I bought a bracelet on the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Just like to send some well wishes if you'd like to join in. McKinley Jones, I bought one of her bracelets. Of course, I'm wearing the one for Sergeant Pies on pancreatic cancer. So just recognizing some people in the community that might need a little help. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman, could I give you a plea to move that fireworks forward if you could?
Yes.
Because my fear is that we're going to enter into that close to the holiday season and not have it finished.
Agreed.
So if you could expedite that, we'd really appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit Committee met on October 13th, and the purpose of that meeting was to review the E911 internal audit report. And there were some issues that we talked about, but what was most significant was whether the cost charged to E911 were eligible expenses in terms of the percentage of time spent providing this service. And also the other significant issue was the fund balance at the end of 2010, which indicated a surplus of $3 million, according to the internal auditor's report. The administration provided a spreadsheet at that meeting that showed revenue versus costs for the program between 2004 and 2010, and their findings showed that they believed that they were not collecting enough money, but there were differences in opinions as to how the revenue was to be used. Internal audit was asked by me as the chair of the committee to research the state's legislative intent after some discussion was held on that issue during the meeting, and they did. They provided each and every one of us with a memo, 7 pages, dated October 19th, I believe. And so with that memo, I think it is really important and prudent that the Municipal Audit Committee reconvene to discuss the findings in that memo and give the administration an opportunity to comment. So therefore, we are meeting again on November 21st at 11:30 in City Hall in the Assembly Conference Room. Thank you. Madam Chair, can I just make one other comment off the subject?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. On September 27th, the municipality of Anchorage, through National League of Cities, with my colleagues, Ms. Drummond and Mr. Trainey, we had a press conference introducing a prescription drug discount program for the citizens in our community. And that press conference was held on September 27th. National League of Cities is keeping statistics on the savings throughout the country, and within a 3-day period, there were 5 prescriptions issued in our community without the cards even being distributed. There were 5 prescriptions, $105 were saved, which is like $21.14 for the 4 users who bought prescriptions, and the average was 24.5%. So it's going to be a really wonderful, effective program to help the folks in our community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And so potentially you may have a recommendation for us later on the E911 after you're done with your audit discussion.
Potentially.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Hall?
Thank you, but no.
All right. Mr. Starr?
We had 2 budget-related meetings last week. Of course, Thursday, we had our formal Finance Committee meeting. We had 2 topics mostly discussed. One of them was a work product that is on the agenda for tonight as it relates to the ASD budget spending guidelines, as well as we had some general conversations about how to handle amendments and just a general checking of the pulse on the budget overview. Friday, as I was taking attendance, everybody attended the work session. The presentation was mostly driven by the administration on the look-see from the operational budget. On November 4th, we'll have another formal work session for the Assembly relating to capital enterprise budgets, and then, of course, the public hearing for tonight as it relates to the budget. So all about budget, 2 meetings last week. I think productive work's being done.
Thank you. Mr. Trombley?
No report.
Ms. Johnston?
The Enterprise Committee will be meeting on November 2nd at 11:30 with AWWU Board as far as their budget. We'll be having a work session on the enterprise budgets on November 4th. And I'd also like to say that I did ride the bus for 2 hours also yesterday, and one of the interesting things that we gleaned from it is they changed out the lights in the bus barn, and it looks like they're going to be having $100,000 savings from changing out the lights. So it's almost a 33% savings, and I just think they should be commended. Thank you.
Expensive lights. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Legislative Committee will convene on Monday, November 7 at 11:30 a.m. to review this document that you referred to, us delaying action on tonight, as well as amendments in concert with the administration.
Thank you. Mr. Birch?
Yeah, I spent the day with the Alaska State Chamber. They're basically building their legislative priorities, and they rolled out at noon today their legislative report card, which was actually pretty interesting because they had an interactive voting mechanism that they handed to everybody in the room, and they had basically a real-time vote on a number of wide-ranging questions. But it was actually it was the first time I participated in something like that, where you're able to vote, like I say, in real time, and actually see how 200 people in the room feel, other than Dancing with the Stars or some of those those programs. Also, last week I attended the biweekly meeting of the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce, and had a couple of really good presentations. And in the process, the Chamber is supporting the city and efforts we're making to secure additional funding for the port. So that's helpful as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry, I forgot to add one thing in my report, that the Chief and I both, Chief Mew and I both had the opportunity to welcome the 29 recruits into the Police Academy yesterday, and they look to be a sterling bunch, including former FBI agent in charge, Kevin Frazley. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty surprising. He retired from the FBI and wants to continue serving in public service, and so he's one of the recruits. So,
Interesting. Thank you.
you bet.
Madam Chair, I represented the Assembly at that same opening, and welcome the class.
Thank you, Mr. Hunman. All right, with that, the addendum and two late on the table items are before us. A motion?
Move to incorporate.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there objection to incorporation? Seeing none, those items are incorporated, and I will go ahead and read them into the record. From the addendum, item B5AR 295, it's a resolution adopting the 2012 legislative program. And item B6 is AR 296. It's a resolution providing guidelines and review principles in advance of Assembly review of the Anchorage School District FY 2012-2013 budget. And then under late on the table items, there is an S version of AO 105. It's an ordinance of the Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 11.10.050 to provide the Transportation Commission authority to establish a fuel surcharge for taxi cab service. There's also, what number would, okay, that would just be with the 105. It's already there. And then 9F7 for introduction is AO 110. This is an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 8 to treat assault convictions under Municipal Code as prior convictions under state law. And the public hearing date on that will be at our next meeting, which is 11/8. All right. So the addendum with the additional items are before us. The consent agenda with the additional items are before us.
Move to incorporate.
All right. That amended agenda is before us. So with that, I'd like to ask if people have specific things they'd like to pull. Can I start with Ms. Drummond down the end?
None at this time.
Mr. Trady.
Ma'am.
Thank you. Just a minute. 5 and 6. All right.
Both of them.
Mr. Honeman?
definitely, I know Mr. Trombley may be reading, but 9 Alpha 1.
9 Alpha 1. Ms. Gray Jackson?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Hall?
No, thank you.
Mr. Starr?
No items.
Mr. Trombley?
No items.
Ms. Johnston? No items. Mr. Quinn?
Madam Chair, just to clarify, on 9 Bravo 4, that typo can be corrected without our action? Okay,
Yes.
then nothing then.
Right, we got that, and it's already on point. So nothing to pull, sir? Mr. Birch?
No items.
Mr. Mayor? Anything? All right. We're a little light on the pulling tonight, which is good. I've got 9A1, and then the only other is the 2 items on the addendum, which are B5 and B6. Is that correct? Yep. All right. With that, please vote on the remainder of the consent agenda. And that passes unanimously. The first item before us is 9A1. This is AR 289. It's a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring and thanking Mike Craig for more than 32 years of service to the municipality.
Move to approve.
Is there discussion? Is there objection? Seeing none, that matter is approved unanimously. Mr. Craig, are you here? Could you come forward, please? Thank you. And who's reading?
That's Madam Chair.
Okay.
Resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring and thanking Mike Craig for more than 32 years of service to the municipality of Anchorage. Whereas Mike Craig joined the Public Transportation Department on October 17, 1979, as an equipment serviceman in the maintenance shop and was promoted to general foreman in September of '05, where he still serves today. He will be retiring on October 31, 2001, with 32 years of dedicated service to the department. And whereas, during his tenure, he has held every maintenance and supervisory position in the shop, as well as working on every shift. In addition, the maintenance shop was recognized twice as a Support Work Unit of the Year for 1986 and again in 1996. And whereas, when Mike first started, the department had an array of various buses blended from several manufacturers, makes, models that were maintenance nightmares. Those old buses, called Van Hools, Mercedes, bread vans, and other terms not appropriate for this resolution, were eventually replaced with real buses from Flyer Industries. During the 90s, an advancement and large learning curve came with new engines, transmissions, and a multitude of complex computer control technology. Mike adapted to this new technology and served as an excellent mentor to others on all these new systems. And whereas, over the years, Mike has helped put into service more than 150 people mover buses, 125 anchor ride buses, and 130 van pool vans. Through Mike's tenure, People Mover has operated over 66 million miles without any major accidents related to maintenance failures. And whereas, Mike understands the value of teamwork, both in success and failure. He is quick to give praise and credit when and where credit is due, and encourages others to evaluate their own standards. Mike has earned the reputation as a wonderful gentleman, the respect as a master technician, the presence of a fair and caring supervisor, the unwavering commitment and devotion to family, a leader and dependable friend. We will sincerely miss him. Therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes his many contributions and honors Mike Craig for more than 32 years of outstanding dedicated service to the municipality and the citizens of Anchorage, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 25th day of October 2011.
Thank you. When you work with the people I have worked with and do work with, it's hard to fail. I've had more support than you can ever imagine. The crew never shirks a task. They've always pulled the weight. The management has always had an open door policy. They would drop anything to help you out. And when you have that kind of backing, that kind of support, you get pretty strong and pretty brave, and you really feel like going for it when you have backup like that. I want to thank you. And I started at People Mover. I wasn't single, but I wasn't married, and I'm leaving a grandpa. I have to say thank you to my wife, Cheryl Craig, who passed away July 26th last year of kidney cancer. We were together 35 and a half years, and because of her, I am who I am. I have a beautiful family, incredible job. I can't say thank you enough, Cheryl. Thank you.
Just a minute, sir. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Mike, I'll always remember the first few years of my tenure as a municipal employee working with you over at the Transit Department. And although we were in different divisions, all the fun we had working with the drivers and throwing picnics and making everybody feel special within the department. And I want to thank you for your service to the people of this community. You've done an outstanding job, and I'm grateful for that. And I wish you well in your retirement and really retire. And if anybody else from Transit retires, I'm not going to know anybody there anymore. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Honeman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, you had me going. I was prepared for all sorts of remarks to you. Got a little choked up again. I too, Ms. Cheryl, and thank you for the opportunity to work with you for all those years and knowing you for all these years. I actually worked with you for a short period, but I've known you and become fast friends for many years and share the love and passion of hockey. So I hope to see you around the rinks as well. I ditto Ms. Gray Jackson's. You're retired, stay retired. I keep goofing it up. My wife thinks I'm the worst retiree ever. The main thing is the main thing, that you've kept your family first, that you were able to stay with the People Mover family for all these years. Don't know how you did it, but you did. And who would have thought that you'd have retired as a general foreman? I know Mr. Taylor just left within the last month, and out the door goes better than 60 years of service right there and institutional memory. So that's a big loss for the People Mover and for this community. I'm sure there'll be someone willing to step up and face some pretty big shoes, but thanks for being a good friend and obviously the service of this community. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, and Mike, on behalf of all of us in the administration, thank you for your decades of service.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated.
We do thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we are now at B5. This is AR 295. It's a resolution adopting the 2012 legislative program for the municipality of Anchorage.
Move to postpone to our next meeting, November 8th.
Second.
Is there any...
I know, I pulled it.
Mr. Trainee, you want
I
to...
pulled that one, ma'am. Normally you come to the person that pulls it. Exact same
I'm
motion.
sorry, sir.
I know.
I looked and...
And I pulled
you
the
didn't
other
make
one,
a move.
too.
Do you want to make a comment?
Anyway, on this one, I have a problem when I read lines 31 through 33 because I don't know which members of the assembly have been asked about this, but I'm not one that's been asked. So I want to make sure it's got the input of all the assembly members before they send this down to Juneau. So I'd appreciate having a meeting, and then we can pass this in front of us on the 8th. Because otherwise what we're doing is what happened last year, where we passed this and then had to send a modification down to the legislature.
Well, Mr. Trainee, you'll be glad to know that when that first came to attention, Ms. Grinstein and I talked about it, and we went to the mayor's office and asked that the caucus meeting be delayed so that we had some time to look through this legislative.
Now, have we got the information from the community councils?
The community councils have submitted the CIP lists, which were looked at by the administration. The administration has also said that we will have an opportunity to submit amendments to them, and certainly to our committee, and that they're planning an S version. So I hear what you're saying, but I think that we will have time to discuss and vote.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there any, Ms. Johnson, you want to make a comment?
I just wanted to remind Mr. Trainee that we will be having a legislative committee meeting on the 7th at 11:30 to discuss all the amendments.
Okay. All right.
November.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not about to make a motion, but just a comment. The motion is to postpone it until November 8th, am I correct?
Just to, I think, was it continue to the 8th? Yes.
Continue to the 8th. I would really like to be here when we vote on this, and I may be here by phone if I land in time enough, so I'm hoping that maybe we can postpone action until the 22nd.
If I could make a suggestion, if you'd like to discuss it now, then you could vote against postponing and we could make some amendments and discussion at this time. I think the only frustration is the caucus meeting is the 18th? The 18th, right.
Right, and I have no intention on asking any of my colleagues to discuss, debate, or vote on this tonight.
Okay.
Absolutely none.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Please. Our clerk has suggested that I ask you if you'd like to have a work session on the legislative program on the 4th.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm seeing some nods. I'm looking at the chair of our legislative committee, our joint chairs. You okay with that? All right, we will add a 4th work session on the legislative program. It looks like, let's see, we start at 11 on the Capitol and 1 on illegal substance. So 10 to 11, is that all right? Okay, we'll add that on now. Thank you. All right, is there objection then to continuing this till the 8th? Seeing none, the matter's continued. The next item before us is B6. This is AR 296. It's a resolution providing guidelines and review principles in advance of the Assembly review of the Anchorage School District FY 2012-2013 budget.
Move to postpone our meeting to the 8th of November, ma'am.
Second. What's your butt?
Any discussion? Mr. Trombley.
Yeah, why are we postponing it?
Mr. Trainee, that was
Because if you read line 6 on page 3 of 3, it says the Assembly will not approve any additional bond propositions for the 2012 ballot. And I really think when you're dealing with something this monumental, we need to have the public testimony on this item, because I think we'd have this place packed with members who have children, individuals who have children that go to the Anchorage School District. If we're telling them they're not going to have any bonds on the ballot. And quite frankly, that's the one time in which we ask the public how they feel about our bonds. And at this point in time, to say we're not even going to consider bonds makes no sense to me. So I intend to have a public hearing on this, Madam Chair, if we can get the votes to do it.
Well, if it's for the children, might as well add the elderly and the poor.
Yes, you should.
Because that's a 50-year-old playbook that's nonstop. That's how we're facing a $160 million deficit in 5 years. So I think we can bring it up, and if you want to make an amendment to it, feel free to do so, but this doesn't require public testimony.
Ms. Drummond?
Madam Chair.
Oh, just a minute. Ms. Drummond, you're next on the floor, and then I'll go back to you, Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was a little bit amazed that this was presented Friday afternoon electronically with no public input, with no conversation with the school board or the administration of the school district. This proposes some major, major policy changes in the way the school district operates and the way the municipality would administer former school district programs. To make a decision on something like this in such a brief period of time with no public input is not something that I'd be willing to do. I absolutely agree with postponing this item.
Mr. Trainee, back to you.
No, nothing I say will get your attention. It's ridiculous to pass something like this, and what you're telling the public in this town is, we don't care what your opinion is on the bond issue. We don't care. We're not going to give it to you to make that decision. And we shouldn't do that to the public in Anchorage.
Ms. Johnston.
Being somebody who was involved in this process of the resolution for the last 2 years, actually, how it's come to you is probably no different than we did it before. And we have, when it's come on to, when it's been part of the agenda, we've amended it. And I have a feeling tonight that there'll be some amendments offered. and there could be some amendments offered as far as the bonding itself, even just changing the wording where we would suggest as opposed to something as strong. So I really don't feel there's a need to postpone it. I'm very involved or have been very involved in these resolutions, and be honest with you, I'm pulling a Miss Gray Jackson card. I'm going to be calling in from Fairbanks because I'll be in the Municipal League on the 8th. So I'm not sure if it will be a little bit more difficult to be involved in the conversation. But in the past, we have not had a public hearing on this.
Mr. Starr.
I don't want to get into debate, although Mr. Trainey's drifting closely there. Don't predicate what I intended in the authoring of this as well. I'm a co-sponsor on it. But Mr. Trainey, when you look at the debt proposals by the municipality, there's no way they can adhere to them. Their debt service requirements for their own program say they're going to reduce their debt service by over $1.5 million. You can't do that and issue continuing bonds on top of continuing bonds. We need to have an educated discussion with it versus the emotional one. And you know, as an experienced legislator up here, that's how things are done in this group. They've asked us for budget guideline as early as we can provide it. This is the work product that's coming out of committee. It's not a committee product. We had a discussion about it, and I think we ought to formally debate the item on there. The public input is important to us, but we all reach out to school board members, past school board members. We have several on the body here now. We're very well equipped to do it, and I think we ought to do it tonight. It makes sense to move the debate as far as we can tonight, and if we reach an impasse, then postpone it. Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Johnston, for reminding the body that this is the way we usually handle the school district resolution, giving them guidelines. You know, it goes to committee and comes before us on the addendum, and then we make some amendments on the floor. But this time, I don't think we should go that route. I was at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and when I looked at this resolution, I thanked Mr. Trombley because he put a lot of work into it, but it's a little bit extreme, folks. It really, really is. And we need to have some discussion on this and some amendments, but not in this arena, because I think it would take up too much of your time and unnecessary time on our part to get the rest of our work done this evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Trombley.
What's extreme is facing a $106 million shortfall in 5 years. That's extreme. And there's no reason to postpone this. Have the discussion now.
Okay, Mr. Flynn, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Trainey.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm of two minds on this one. I did attend the Budget and Finance Committee meeting where Mr. Trombley presented this, and I do thank him for incorporating at least one of the changes I suggested. I have a couple more that I just placed in front of you. And while I would like to have a final version rather than making amendments on the floor before us that we're all generally comfortable with before we get into debate, I don't think we'll get there even with 2 more weeks, and I don't think our workload is going to lighten between now and then. So the public hearing, however, I would have no problem with. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Trainey.
Madam Chair, normally I don't speak 3 times because I know you allow us twice. But I've got a question for the school board president because how she feels about this may largely determine how I vote on this issue. Since she's here, could we bring her up and ask her a question, ma'am?
Certainly. Would you come on up, Ms. Guest?
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I've just got a question.
No.
How would you feel?
I'm going to allow a little bit wider than strictly postponement in hopes that we can get some of this settled and move forward.
I'm a school board president. How do you feel about being told that we're not going to consider any bonds, no matter how important it is for you to send these bonds to the public? What does that do to you as a school board member?
Through the chair, Mr. Trainey, the last direction we got from the Assembly was at the joint meeting. That direction was to look at a bond package that was less than what the bond debt retirement was going to be. That was a similar direction that I think the mayor has taken the city. It's a similar direction, actually, that the board had already given the administration. It is the Assembly's decision. I mean, the school board does not make our decision of what bonds go forward, nor does it decide how much revenue we get. So I appreciate the fact that you all have the red and green buttons on this. We have, as you all know, maintenance, typically maintenance, Service High School, Girdwood, CT&E. You all know the projects that are out there. Our bonds are right now going through our process, hopefully a better revamped process than it's been in the past, and will be in front of our board on the 14th. If you intend to have a bond holiday only for the school district, not for the city, but for the school district, I guess I'd rather know that today, because then our staff won't spend the time, our board won't spend the time passing a bond package. You all are intelligent public servants. You know what it's going to mean to your districts and to the city if we don't have any bonds, or if folks vote them down. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman, and then I think we need to just vote on this. Go ahead.
I just, yes, here, I was wondering, thank you for being here tonight. And I know you haven't been on the body very long, but do you recall, and I'm trying to remember my mind, the school district had a bond package last election, but prior to that, was it 2 election cycles that was a bond holiday? Or 3, or do you know?
I'm sorry, I don't know the history. I'm looking, Ms. Johnson?
Just one? Okay.
One holiday.
All right, thank you. All right, I suggest we vote on this, and if there's further discussion or debate, it can occur if you wish. So the vote right now is on postponement. I'm going to put on the board. If you want this item postponed, vote yes, otherwise no. All right, that item will not be postponed. We need a motion. Ms. Johnson, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move, actually,
We don't have it in front of us yet, do we?
There is no motion in front of us. The motion that was failed was just to postpone.
yes, I move Mr. Trombley's resolution.
All right, that matters before us. Ms. Johnson, did you want to speak?
Yes, I have a couple of questions for the administration. One is, the last 2 years, we've actually held the school district's budget relatively flat. The first year what we did is we said you could increase your impact on the taxpayers, but it would be only if you assumed some of the costs of the municipality. And the major cost was the SROs at that time. Ms. Frasca, could you explain the cost right now of the SROs for last year, this year, and what they'll be for 2012?
Through the chair, in 2010, the SROs, we transferred $1.2 million of the cost, which was about 50%. And in 2011, that cost is $2.6 million in the current year, and in 2012, $2.7 million.
Okay, thank you. The other question I would like to ask is as far as the tax cap. And if we did hold the funding flat, what effect would that have on the school district side of the tax cap? Ms. Fresca.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I was being distracted.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I have the floor. This item, and we've discussed this as far as the tax cap, if we held the funding flat, where would the school district come in as far as the tax cap, and what's the effect of that?
Well, if you held property taxes flat, it would be about $8.4 million below the cap.
The tax cap. And what's our current budget? How much are we below the tax cap?
$3.1 million if you don't include service areas.
Okay.
For 2012.
I would like to make an amendment, excuse me, to Mr. Trombley's resolution. I would like to amend line 26 to the budget supported by municipality. Real property taxes shall not increase by more than 1% over the 2011 and 2012.
It's 26 on page 2.
2, yes, thank you. And on line 28,
Just a minute, let's do one, make sure everybody's got this one first, if you don't mind. All right, could you repeat that? Now everybody's got the page, Ms. Johnston?
yes,
You're a
I would
little-
like to...
You're a little close to the mic.
Oh, am I?
Go ahead.
Okay. Trying to have a big booming voice.
We got it.
Real property taxes show not increased by more than 1% over the ASD 2011-2012 budget.
Okay, and so that's substituting for,
Shall not, let's see, it would be the same as.
I'm sorry, what I need for you to do is read number 1 as your amendment.
The ASD for year 2012-2013 budget supported by the municipal real property taxes shall not increase by more than 1% over the ASD year 2011-2012 budget.
And the intent on that would be to increase real property tax revenue by 1%?
By 1%.
All right, and that was seconded by Mr. Birch.
In the second, because they go hand in hand, I would like to amend line 28, and where it says 2,337 million, 300, late night last night, $237,587,445. I'd like to replace that with $239,963,319.45. And the reason I'd like to do that is, as I've said, 2 years ago when Mr. Flynn and I crafted this resolution, we held the school district budget flat. Last year, I think they did take the additional costs, the year-round costs, the SROs, and some of other administrative tax costs. And I think it was probably about a 4% increase, 0.4% increase that they got in their budget. And when you look at their 6-year plan, and when you read as far as the exposure they have in year 5, we have to think about how we're going to address a critical issue like that. Because even though the state is constitutionally on the hook for education, we are also as taxpayers. And I would hate to condemn another assembly in 5 years to be looking at making choices between safety, health, and education to cover some of these overruns. So I think we have to be very conscious of our tax cap and how we address our liabilities. I'm not going the full 1.9%, but I do feel that we do need to increase it somewhat. Thank you.
And if we could confirm with the administration, is that a 1%, that dollar figure that she gave? Do we know?
I'm not sure we came armed with our calculators today.
I did it in my head, so somebody might check it with a calculator.
Cheryl's got hers. And just a quick correction, Madam Chair. Jennifer had asked what our budget is under the tax cap in the proposed 2012. It's $1.5 million under the tax cap.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as the other architect of the last couple of budget resolutions, well, portions of them anyway, I come to a slightly different conclusion than my colleague. We have held the district flat 1 year and gave them a pretty miserly increase last year, and hence the reason you have another amendment in front of you that would offer the district a 1.9% increase, which is on par with what we, the Assembly, are contemplating for the city's budget. I think it's fair to let them grow with us at this point, given the steps we have taken in the past couple of years. Thank you, Madam Chair. Therefore, I want to vote no on this one and offer my other amendment next.
Okay. Ms. Frasca, when you have that figure, just let me know. Is that?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Trombley.
The challenge I have is that, as Mr. Traney so eloquently stated earlier, it's about the kids. Well, what I have a hard time reconciling is that the numbers came out for the amount of students that we have in the Anchorage School District, and they're down 263 students. So how do I reconcile an increase in spending and a decrease in students? I don't know. I look at a 6-year fiscal plan and I say, well, we're not approaching the cliff, we're off the cliff. I hope we can grow some wings. It's just, it's tough for me to justify an increase. I may do it, but do I prefer 1% over 1.9%? Sure. The lesser of two evils, but spending has to track the amount of students that you have, and it doesn't do that. It never has.
Is there no one else in queue? Please vote on Ms. Johnston's amendment. 1, 2, 3, and that passes 6-5. Okay, the matter is before us once more. Mr.
Madam
Flynn?
Chair, I'll move amendment number 1 as listed before you, that basically does the same thing as Ms. Johnston's amendment did, but allows for a 1.9% increase.
Second.
To a total of $242,101,606.
Okay, and did you confirm that's the correct amount, sir, for that figure?
Yeah.
Okay. He did with a calculator.
I did mine ahead of
Very good. All right, Mr. Honeman on that amendment? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Flynn, did you want to speak further to it?
Yeah, just one real brief point.
Go ahead.
Mr. Trombley does make an excellent point that the student population for this school year is down a couple hundred students. Similarly, the municipal budget for 2012 anticipates fewer employees, and yet it's up. And so in many cases, services are down. The reason that costs go up is because utilities go up, labor costs go up, and equipment costs go up. So I think we definitely need to work with our friends on the school board to mitigate increases and help them find efficiencies and combine services wherever we can. But I do think we need to be fair and let them grow with us and not ask them to take the burdens that we're unwilling to take.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman.
Well said by my colleague, Mr. Flynn. I had the same points. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Trainee.
Just that I appreciate the amount of students has gone down, but the problem is the federal government is adding more requirements constantly to what a school district has to do without corresponding federal funding, as is the state. So unless you can stop them from passing legislation, you'll continue to see the school district budgets go up because they have no choice. You were there, Debbie, you know. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Johnston.
Well, I somewhat agree with my colleague. I do see that there's sort of a change in the air. And I have to say that after working on this for almost 5 years, I've noticed that there is a lot more cooperation now between the municipality and the school district as far as shared services. And I think it's through shared services we're going to start seeing some real impact on these budgets. Nothing's official yet, but there really is some really healthy work going on in these departments. And I just feel you kind of have to, politics is always a pull and push, and I feel that the compromise of 1% still accomplishes where there is an increase, but it still forces both the municipality and the school district to start looking at sharing services and decreasing costs. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in queue, please vote on Mr. Flynn's amendment. And that fails 5-6.
Madam Chair, I'd move my amendment number 2.
All right. Discussion on amendment. Why don't you read it, sir, so that everyone in the public knows?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It simply would change the discussion of bonding to read that the Assembly encourages Anchorage School District to be judicious in seeking additional bond authority in 2012.
All right. You want to speak further to it, sir?
It's really nifty. You should all vote for it.
All right. Mr. Starr.
One of the challenges that I have is not having an infrastructure understanding that I need to make a decision like this. And it's hard also when it's sort of all over the board in terms of policy statements. And so I would recommend some additional forethought in that. We'll have another crack at the apple here when bonds come to us for approval. So I think it's just a message that we need a clearer policy statement on bonding for maintenance, or continue to expand our infrastructure, or policy on purchasing lands for future school sites, or some of the more generalized fiscal challenges that would pressure our bonds. So for me, I'm fine with that. I hope the message is sent that not only that, you have a debt servicing issue if you're not careful with additional bonds that exceed what you retire. And so what the municipality's resolution on that, our guidance to the administration was modified from no bonding or bonding holiday to one that spoke to being careful that you don't overissue past what you currently retire, which keeps a handle on your debt. And I have all kinds of speak and illustrations where your own work products, meaning the ASD work products, speak to that, either the 6-year fiscal plan or the budget documents from last year. You actually do forecast. That's what I was alluding to, Mr. Training, earlier, is even the school district's own numbers that they're using as their budget building basis indicates a lower debt service. So they're either doing it through refinancing and achieving lower money, or they plan to retire significantly amount of bonds or not issue more. So however that's done, I'm happy that the debt itself, so we can get out from underneath this $1.2 billion debt burden that we have. That's excessive, I think, for a growing problem across the country. And how do we come up with enough money to do that? I'll only pontificate one more time, and that's be careful what we bond for. Taking 20-year notes out on 10-year life items doesn't make a whole lot of sense as well. And contrary to the mayor, I don't view bonds and debt as a line of credit. I think it's something that you treat as what our kids have to pay for. So, I'm happy with the language that's softened by Mr. Flynn. I think the message has best been set, and then when the bonding discussion, as the budget comes back to us, we can debate further. Thank you.
Mr. Trainee.
Just I'll support this amendment, because in talking to the head of FEMA, after we saw that unfortunate thing that happened down in New Orleans, I asked Ray Naglin, the mayor of New Orleans, what did he learn from it? He said, if you don't do your own deferred maintenance, the feds come in after a national emergency and they take deferred maintenance off the table. They don't help at all, because you should have taken care of your buildings. So if we have deferred maintenance out there and letting the school district deal with it, we will pay it come the next national emergency we have here in Anchorage, an earthquake or whatever. So this at least modifies the language so it's acceptable. Thank you, Pat.
Mr. Birch.
I guess one of my interests is in the aggregate amount of square footage that we have in the school district. And I think there's been adequate public discussion and dialogue regarding we've had a relatively steady, I should say, we have the same number of students that we had maybe 10 years ago in large part, and yet we've got a significant increase in the square footage. So I would certainly encourage the school district, and perhaps there's a way we can assist and support that effort to evaluate the square footage and the utility of that square footage to meeting the mission and purpose. But I will be supporting this amendment. I think if we do move forward, it needs to be cautious and involve the public process in reviewing those bonds. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in queue, please vote on Mr. Flynn's second amendment. And that amendment passes 10-1. Is there any further discussion or amendments on this matter? Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the work that's gone into this, and excuse me. While I know that some of the discussion perhaps hasn't been as public as some members requested earlier, I would offer my compliments to Mr. Trombley, who I know did reach out to Ms. Guest and others in developing his proposal. And we did, in fact, spend some time on it last week in Budget and Finance, and hence my ability to both affect some change prior to it getting to us and a little bit more tonight. Ultimately, however, I think we're being a little unfair by
our unwillingness to allow the district's budget to grow with ours, given what we have done to them the past 2 years and not to ourselves. So I regretfully am going to have to vote no on this. I appreciate the improvements that have been made and the thoughtful deliberation that's occurred, but I can't support it as written. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Johnston.
This is starting to be a Mutt and Jeff show. I will be a yes vote on this. I ditto everything that Mr. Flynn said about Mr. Trombley. He has reached out. He's spent many hours with the school district. I also want to say I greatly appreciate the chair of the school district and her comments. I've said more than once that I had been told when I first got up here on the assembly that I learned that we had all the fiscal responsibility and they had all the policy, and it's true, and I think we need to take it very seriously. I also want to say that I just want to give a plug to our mayor, because a week doesn't go by that I don't read in 2 or 3 different periodicals about education reform, or books, and the mayor is taking this very seriously in his education summit, and I've been very happy that he's allowed me to be working with the school board and his administration and crafting the data that's going to be used in this summit and the questions we have as far as education. Because education, if you read anything, you'll find that our economic crisis and even our security crisis depends on how we address education. And I think we all, even though it is about numbers and finance, it's more than that. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity for this discussion in November.
Mr. Starr.
Thanks, Jennifer, for that. For several things. First, I've had some brief interactions, mostly email, with the president of the school board here, and I'm happy that we're having those. I'm also relatively pleased for a couple reasons on our body's behalf, that we're starting to talk real numbers, finite numbers. When you put in resolutions $242 million and you speak right to the gnat, to me that shows that we're starting to do our homework. Perhaps some have always done their homework, but now it's starting to become more evident that we're getting real with where we want to go from a bigger perspective. I spent a lot of time on this resolution speaking to matters past just the budget approval for this year. I want to make sure that we start to look at products that help all of us, as well as future assemblies, in the 6-year fiscal plans. Those sound real wordy and a high level of finance. Really what they are is a planning tool that allows us to see if we're on mark or not. It allows us to also look down the road for crises that may be coming down there. We see quickly funding challenges when, like Mr. Traney references, the federal government pulling back and some of that. So with the resolution on taxing and some of that other stuff, there's other accountability measures. Not in a hammer per se. I would like that product to come to us in a willing format, that you would also want a fiscal plan, meaning the school board members and the school presidents and the administration would want to balance the best that they could so that the modeling that they put forth actually can be doable, can be attainable without some unrealistic expectation that we're going to get bailed out by the federal government or taxed at high levels or have 30, 40 million, $50 million cuts or 106 million in cumulative. That's unrealistic and not good fiscal modeling. So in this resolution that none of us really spoke to are other aspects to it, concurrent with that is the 6-year plan. Hopefully goes up for a public review and a public discussion then, Mr. Traney. All of those plans and models, to me, are what's going to allow us to do more than just wipe our brow at the end of a budget approval and look from one year to the next with a fiscal model that works. I'll also touch on the fact that we tend to tinker with the budgets throughout the year. And we did this just about 2.5 months ago. We increased the last year's school district budget from $811 million. We gave them $830 million, if you all remember that action on this body, because of an additional appropriation that came out of the state. So we have to be cognizant that how do we, with the continuation budget, another big buzzword here, the continuation budget is what we start with next year. So when they bring us a tabled budget, it's not going to be the $811 million that was approved by this body under deliberation and public hearing. It's going to be the $830 million budget, which now, again, has a bigger gap fiscally on how to do that. The $811 million forecast almost $29 to $30 million in a shortfall, budget cuts or not increased spending. You've got your work cut out for you guys at the school board significantly, even with this. And this sounds like an easy way to blame it on the Assembly for not giving you more money. Even if we gave you 3 to 5% or right up to the tax cap, you would still have a fiscal deficit. And that is very, very challenging for all of us. And that's where our community and these two bodies had better come together and make it happen. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
I just want to thank Mr. Starr for some of his comments. He's highlighting a lot, so I'll try not to take too long a time. But I'm really in a quandary on this. I know that we met some middle ground here on the amendments, and I think that's very great. I too am concerned. I don't believe the 1.9% puts us at the cap. I think it keeps us below the cap, even more so for the school district than it does for general government. I laud the efforts for our education summit, having some fairly bright people to come in and talk about it. But I've been listening to a lot of members in the community. I've been listening to community councils. I've been listening to our school board members. And clearly, everywhere I go, I'm hearing concerns on two folds. And one, of course, is the dollars. And we do need to be very diligent about where our dollars are spent, watching and mindful, scrubbing, if you want to call it that, to make sure that we're not spending one penny more than we need. But I went to all the viewpoint learning sessions for the budget last year. As I believe I was the only Assembly member that went to all of them. I know that I saw several of my colleagues, some of you on the board here as well. I went to at least 2 of the ASD budget talks. And I can tell you that there's some great and bright and smart people in this community that know how they want their dollars spent on education. And just to illustrate, I don't know how many members on this body went to Anchorage School District School. I think Mr. Trombley did. I think the mayor even went to West High School, Patrick Flynn, myself. I don't know how many others, but we're intelligent enough to get here on this body. And just not too long ago, I just reported in the last month that there was a Bartlett High grad who went about 5 years after I graduated, apparently took some of my brain cells that were rolling around and became the Nobel Prize winner for physics. So we've got a great school district, and I'm concerned that we're not giving them enough dollars to make sure that they meet the needs for the next coming years, particularly when we've been throttling back and giving them some very strong guidance. I believe we do need to give the guidance, and I'm willing to do that. But I think our state's in good shape. I am concerned about the federal mandates and even some state mandates, and I believe the state should be able to pony up some more. And I just don't see that this is the winning solution at this point. So I'm still at a quandary of where I will vote on this.
Mr. Trombley.
I just want to thank Chairman Guest for meeting with me. And I tell you, I think this is fantastic leadership that we have at the school district. It's under Chairman Guest. She's very good at what she does. And she truly has the best interest in mind. I know she focuses on education, and that's what she wants. And I feel comfortable with this amount because I know fiscally she's very prudent, and she'll focus the dollars in the proper direction. So thank you again, and I know you're going to do a fantastic job.
Seeing no one else in queue, please vote on the amended resolution. And that passes 6-5. The next item before us is under old business. It's 11A, AM 582. It's the Anchorage Community Development Authority Board of Directors appointments.
Move to approve.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. That is approved unanimously. I don't think any of them are here, are they, Mr. Mayor?
I don't see any of the reappointments here.
All right. The next item before us is 11B. This is AM 583. It's a plating board appointment for Trevor Edmondson.
I'll move to approve.
Seeing no one in queue, please vote. That appointment is approved unanimously.
And Trevor is here. So.
Mr. Edmondson is here.
And we
get him down here.
Okay. Mr. Edmondson, would you come on down, please?
Madam Chair, members of the Assembly, I just want to thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to serving the community. So thank you.
Thank you. I think Mr. Flynn has a question.
Welcome, Trevor. Good to see you.
We'll see if you have the same sentiment in a year.
Thank you for your service, sir.
All right, thank you.
We appreciate it. And on 11C, the next item is 11C, AIM 102. This is the internal audit report, the E911 surcharge. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to postpone acceptance until the meeting of November 22nd.
Second.
Is there objection to that? Seeing none, this matter is, I'm sorry, till, you said the 22nd, didn't you? Okay.
Yes.
This matter is continued to the 22nd. The next item before us is 11D. This is AR 278. It's a resolution appropriating an amount not to exceed $7,300 as a contribution from the Tricentennial Fund to the Miscellaneous Operational Grant Fund to close out the Tricentennial Fund, accompanied by AM 565. And there is a motion to approve already on the floor on this one.
They tried.
Mr. Flynn, do you
I
want to
appreciate
comment?
it. I'm done. I'll go.
No comment, sir? All right, Ms. Drummond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little concerned that the resolution itself does not mention the year of the tricentennial celebration. And since most of us probably won't be around in 2076, I'd feel better if there was a way to track the actual date of this thing through the resolution rather than through the Assembly memorandum. So I would like to move to add on page 2 of the resolution, line 3,
Oh, I see.
in 2076, after the word celebration.
Second.
That motion was made by Ms. Drummond and seconded by Mr. Hall. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that amendment is incorporated. All right, we're back to the main matter as amended. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
You've got to be intellectually honest and vote no.
That item is approved unanimously 10-0. Let's see. We are now at appearance requests. And is there a representative from the Unitarian Fellowship here? Would you like to come forward, please? Mr. Mayor, did you want to take part in this? All right, very good. Oh my, we have a lot of you today. Last time it's just been one. Great.
Is this your favorite part of the year?
It's nice. Go ahead.
Citizens bringing checks. My name's Doug Eby. I'm the president of the Anchorage Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at the present time, and the Reverend Beatrice Hitchcock would be here with us, except she's out of state. These are some of the members who chose to come and help bring the check to the city. If I could read just this very brief statement.
Go ahead, sir.
To the City of Anchorage, for most of the past 50 years of our incorporation, the Anchorage Unitarian Universalist Fellowship has chosen to make a voluntary payment in lieu of taxes. This payment is towards the real estate taxes for our building and our property. Please accept the enclosed check as you have in previous years. We recognize how we as a congregation and property owner benefit from services such as schools, fire, police, roads, drainage, and the parks, and the oversight that helps keep us and our buildings safe. In making this payment in lieu of taxes, we honor our founders by continuing their commitment to share in the care of our beautiful city. We also do this also, and perhaps most importantly, in the affirmation of the separation of church and state that safeguards our freedom to worship in our nation. We want to thank you in the Assembly and Mayor Dan Sullivan and all of the rest of you who make this place work for your commitment to sustaining this municipality and the people in this municipality in peace and equity, justice, and goodwill. Thank you from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship.
Thank you, sir.
Well, he didn't say how much it was. It's in the amount of $2,100, and we thank you very much.
Thank you. Could you come back up, sir? Mr. Trainee has a question for you. Would you mind coming back up?
Sir.
Well, I don't know. It
Fine.
depends on how tough the question is, I guess. Mr. Trainee?
It's just thank you. I've been on the Assembly for a few years, and every year you're here, and I wish the other congregations would do what you did rather than trying to go to Juneau and figure ways around paying taxes.
Right.
Thank you very much. You set a good example for
You're
me.
very, very welcome.
Thank you, sir. All right. With that, we're now at the public hearing section of our agenda. And the first item before us is our first public hearing on AO 2011. This is an ordinance adopting and appropriating funds for the 2012 general government operating budget. It's accompanied by AM 554.
Madam Chair, prior to our beginning, would you entertain a motion to combine the public hearing on items 14A through 14G?
I can certainly do that.
Second.
Does anyone object to that? All right, then I'm going to combine the public hearing. So basically, this will be a public hearing. You can come speak to us about the operating budget, the capital improvement budget, the general government improvement budget, the utility and enterprise budget, and you went all the way down to G, didn't you, sir? Yep. And the operating and capital budget for the Community Development Authority, as well as our 6-year fiscal plan. So any of those topics, feel free to come on down. And Ms. Gray-Jackson, did you want to say something before the public hearing started?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to echo Mr. Flynn's comment.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Starr, anything before the public hearing
Just some
started?
clarity, Madam Chair, on the policy to testify only once on a matter before the Assembly. However, I'd like some latitude that as the S versions come out, we can perhaps afford the public a second time to come up to the microphone so we don't get too heavy-handed.
I would agree. I think that it's important to be
So
flexible.
I think the idea that we hear from them for the next 3 meetings would be very helpful, but the last one where we see the amendments also is fair game for public input. Thank you.
Good point, Mr. Starr. Thank you. Anyway, at this point, if you want to talk to us about budgets, please come forward. Anybody? Yeah, come on down, and if you could start by saying your name clearly and spelling your last name, it'll help us with our records.
Okay, my name is Nathan Vandermost, Nathan, last name Vandermost, Vandermost.
Very good. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Dear Assembly, my name is Nathan Vandermost, and I come before the Assembly to ask it to reevaluate the current plan for Parks and Rec to delete 3 full-time recreation program specialist 2 positions and create 4 seasonal part-time recreation program specialist 2 positions in its place. I understand that departments across this city were asked to reduce costs in their budgets for the 2012 fiscal year. Similarly, I've had to tighten my budget both personally and professionally and understand the difficulties that arise with this task. I also understand that Director Roda's objective is to ensure that the public will enjoy the same high level of services that Parks and Rec has offered. I've had the opportunity to look at the online resources available for citizens in regards to the 2012 proposed budget, as well as the 2012 proposed general government operating budget for Parks and Recreation. Both of these resources offer a lot in terms of financial figures and spreadsheets. What they are lacking is the sacrifice being made by city employees to do more with less. And they do not represent the people who will be losing their jobs and livelihood so that figures on a spreadsheet are balanced. I ask the Assembly to look specifically at full-time positions that are being cut and reevaluate the legitimacy of these decisions and the consequences that they will have on the people that currently fill them. How long have these people worked for the city? Are they effective employees? Do they meet and exceed their job duties? These are the questions that should dictate whether an employee should be terminated. Part-time employees, as the mayor proposes, cannot replace the accessible nature of full-time professionals. Having volunteered and aided in organizing events, specifically the Tuesday night races, which are going on right now, I think it is unrealistic to expect part-time employees to provide the same support and services of full-time professionals. Full-time professionals are able to forge relationships with the people in the community and act as a catalyst for a variety of different programs that is offered. Additionally, I think that quality recreational programming provided by the full-time professionals increases the quality of life in Anchorage, making it a more attractive place to live. Everything from after-school and summer programs to events like the Tuesday night race is what makes Anchorage what it is. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Sullivan, members of the Assembly, good evening. My name is Leif Monet. I am the co-chair of the Board of Directors of the Anchorage Youth Court. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to address the Assembly this evening, and I am here tonight to speak on the behalf of the Anchorage Youth Court. First, we thank the City of Anchorage for providing funding for our organization in the past. I urge you to continue this support in the current budget. The Anchorage Youth Court has a simple but profound mission: to deliver justice for youth, by youth. In the Anchorage Youth Court, student volunteers such as myself receive considerable training, take the Anchorage Youth Court bar exams, and then, working under the supervision of adult legal advisors and a small but dedicated professional staff, we defend, prosecute, and sentence real juvenile defendants who have committed minor misdemeanor crimes such as shoplifting, criminal mischief, and misconduct involving controlled substances. These highly trained teen volunteers serve as bailiffs, attorneys, clerks, and judges. We view the actions of the juvenile defendants as mistakes. Instead of putting the focus on punishing them, we attempt to rehabilitate them so they will not commit crimes in the future. Working youth to youth, we help them learn from their mistakes, repay their debt to society, and become productive members of our community. Anchorage Youth Court is an integral and effective part of the juvenile justice system of Anchorage, Eagle River, Chugiak, and Girdwood. I refer you to our 2010 annual report for more statistics and details on the types of juvenile cases we handle, student and adult volunteer effort, and the source of our funding. I understand that this has been mailed to you. I summarize to say that the system works. It is extremely cost-effective for the city. It uses the adult efforts of youth volunteers and other youth to help other youth who have made relatively minor mistakes get their lives on a better track. Since 1989, the Anchorage Youth Court has leveraged public funds with private donations, and especially with the volunteer service of over 2,200 youth volunteers, volunteer legal advisors, a volunteer board of directors, volunteer bar instructors, and the countless other people who believe in this organization. In 2010, 240 Anchorage Youth Court members volunteered over 7,300 community work service hours through court service and non-court activities. Thus far in 2011 alone, Anchorage Youth Court youth volunteers have dedicated a total of 5,918 hours to help other youth, and counting. While I'm addressing this body, student youth volunteers are working diligently defending, prosecuting, and judging juvenile cases at the Boney Courthouse. It is important to note that the benefits provided by Anchorage Youth Court go far beyond a positive economic balance sheet or even a lower recidivism rate. In the Anchorage Youth Court, youth learn to lead and to give to their community. We help other youth. Youth who have made a mistake are given an opportunity to learn from that mistake, to see an alternative model of youth behavior, and to understand both the importance of paying for your mistakes and giving back to the community to which you belong. The intangible benefits of these lessons to the future of our city and our society are not easily measured, but as one who has participated in many roles within this organization, I can assure you the value of them is very high. They are profound. Neither those of us who volunteer nor those who go through the system as defendants come out the same. We all come out stronger, wiser, and more able and willing to give to our community. Thank you again for your past support of the Anchorage Youth Court, for giving us a chance to speak before you this evening. On behalf of this organization, your continued support is sincerely appreciated. Thank you.
Sir, could you spell your last name?
Monnett.
Thank you. Wait a minute, sir. Just a minute. Ms. Johnson has a question.
Yes, I noticed that your referrals have sort of decreased, and I was wondering what they are as far as your actuals for 2011 at this point.
I do not have that number on the tip of my tongue. It's a very good question. I do not know it right now. I do know that we have the numbers, and I will have the office get back to you.
Do you have an idea why the referrals have decreased, or are your cases taking more time? What?
I am not sure. I believe that the cases are actually taking slightly less time. I believe it's just that McLaughlin is referring fewer to us, though I could be mistaken. But I am not sure. But the answer, we do have the answer. I just don't know it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Flynn?
And you may not know this, so I'll apologize, but we support you through our grants program that is administered by the Municipal Manager's Office, correct?
I believe so. That does sound correct.
Okay. And
That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Fresca, did you want to weigh in on that?
Through the chair, there's also a grant through the Department of Health and Human Services, so I believe they get 2.
Okay. And do we? I don't remember. I looked through the manager's budget. I didn't see any reduction to that line item.
That's correct. It's the
Same
same
thing?
funding level as the current year.
Same over at HHS.
Pardon?
And the same fund pool at HHS for next
Yes.
year. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us this time to speak tonight. My name is Bradley Borden. Last name is spelled Bourdon, and I'm the Assistant Chief Judge of Anchorage Youth Court. AYC is not only beneficial to the defendants, but it also provides unique experiences and opportunities for the student volunteer members as well. Before I started volunteering at Anchorage Youth Court 2 years ago, the legal profession had never appealed to me as a career path. But this organization has given me the insight to pursue a place in the legal field. Furthermore, Anchorage Youth Court allows the defendants and the volunteers to see the consequences of their actions to their fullest extent. AYC gives the defendant a second chance for their unfortunate lapses in judgment. For we must not allow ourselves to be defined by our faults and our transgressions, but by our efforts to rectify those mistakes. AYC provides that opportunity. In the past, minors have been bystanders in the legal system. Anchorage Youth Court gives the youth of our city the chance to participate in the determination of justice for their peers. The adolescent members of our society can now be voices for their generation, delivering sentences tailored to the unique defendants that appear in our courtroom. The skills retained by the members of AYC benefit them throughout their entire lives. Public speaking, an underlying knowledge of our state's legal system, the ability to understand and appreciate our peers, no matter what the difference is. The things that one learns when volunteering at Anchorage Youth Court continue, no matter where our alumni travel on life's path. Anchorage Youth Court is an organization that has profoundly affected not only my life for the better, but also for the lives of many of Anchorage's young people. Our trained volunteers work to ensure that everyone is given the opportunity to earn a second chance. We at Anchorage Youth Court work to truly provide justice for youth by youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No questions, it appears. Did you want to say something else?
Is Mrs. Johnston's question regarding lowering of cases referred to Anchorage Youth Court? The reason for that is that when a probation officer receives a juvenile offense, such as misdemeanors or minor felony offenses, they see if it is tailored to AYC, that it would be a right fit to our case, and there has been a lowering of crimes that fit the bill of what AYC would take, more so than a lack of exposure for Anchorage Youth Court. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to. I would like to recognize my former colleague, Ms. Jennings. I thought you were going to come up and speak, Pam. That's why I didn't recognize you right away. Thank you. I'm one of the co-chairs, I see. Good for you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Leon Chapman. I'm a retired Marine.
Sir, Mr. Chapman, can you speak in the microphone?
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Very good.
Good evening again. I'm Leon Chapman. I'm a retired Marine. I work in I'm an Eagle River resident since 1965. I've been married 29 years. I have 4 children. I'm raising my grandson. I coach Boys and Girls Club football. I also coach high school football at this time. I've worked for the municipality since 1995. In 1995, I came as a temporary caretaker 1. In 1998, I became a permanent caretaker 1, working seasonally as an operator. In 2002, I became a permanent caretaker 2, and I worked as a seasonal operator at that time. Right now, I'm presently an operator for park maintenance. I'm here today because this administration wants to eliminate 3 park caretaker operator positions. A proposal not to fill the existing caretaker 2 positions and hire a few seasonals was not an option. The reason given is operators are not needed in the winter. This is not true. They want to demote the 2 operators to park caretaker 2 positions and create 16 more seasonal positions. Operators are being demoted because of lack of work in their class. The reason is that park caretakers 2 can operate a trackless. At one time, only operators were allowed to operate the trackless. All other departments require a Class B CDL in order to operate this piece of equipment. Municipality, state, This change was allowed by our union because at the time the city said this would speed up removal of snow on sidewalks and trails so that people would not walk on streets, and that this change would not affect operators. This administration thinks parks operations can be operated in the same manner as Eagle River. If operators are not needed, why is there one operator position remaining for 3 separate sections? Demotion of permanent employees and creating more seasonal employees that are not being filled is counterproductive. The budget proposal does not give caretaker 1s or caretaker 2s any opportunity for advancement or promotion. This does not encourage people seeking long-term employment with the municipality. If upper management had better knowledge about how to utilize operator positions, it would save money and increase productivity. Permanent employees are more valued to the city because of their knowledge, experience, loyalty, commitment to the city. Opportunities for advancement are an important motivation for permanent employees. The budget proposed is misleading. It does not show the true picture of park maintenance. Positions are listed that have not been filled in many years. Positions are listed that will probably not be filled. To compare Anchorage to Eagle River is really unrealistic in so many ways.
Mr. Chapman, you're going to have to summarize.
Okay,
Go ahead,
in summary, I only got one more point and I'm done.
Go for it.
To demote 2 operators, and I say again, to demote 2 operators to caretaker 2s and hire 4 more seasonals costs at least 3 times as much.
Thank you.
And sorry for that. I went beyond my time.
You're fine.
Practice.
You're fine. Ms. Gray Jackson has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for having the courage to come out and speaking about the fact that you're about to lose your job. And just remember one thing, anything worth fighting for is never easy, and I'm glad you're out here explaining to us your side of the story.
Yes,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
I, too, want to thank you for your service to the community, to the city, and also as your volunteerism at the schools and with our youth and coaching football. It's huge. It's a huge, tremendous, important volunteer service that you provide. I thank you for the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what you do, and I'd love to talk to you more offline about some of the processes, what would happen if this change is effected. So I'd love to talk to you more about it. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Trombley.
I'm right over here. I'm a little unclear.
Okay.
I'm looking at the Parks and Rec budget sections here, major changes, and it doesn't show any filled positions being lost. Are you saying that your position is being cut?
They are eliminating the operator position. And
So is it a vacant?
No.
It's a vacant position. Is it filled?
It is filled. This is a position
that's not what I see.
if you look down, I have the same thing that you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's on 18.5, I think that is. If we're looking at the same thing. I have this right here. This is what I got offline, so online,
Right.
as far as the budget. And
Are you looking at the Parks and Rec?
I'm looking at Parks and Rec Division Summary.
He's on the big budget book page.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, and I tell him the page on the big budget book again. If you would, sir.
18-5?
I'm sorry, I don't have that book in front of me.
Go ahead. I'll get it. Go ahead, Mr. Trombley.
Oh, that's all right. Is it? That's fine. I was just asking for clarification.
Sure. And I'm here to tell you that they are eliminating operators' positions, and they are going to demote me, one of those that's in that position. There's two of us, and they're going to put us in a lower position, which is caretaker twos. That's their intention, and that's what they want to do. I disagree with that. I think my job is important.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you. Just for clarification, I know Ms. Gray Jackson made the comment, but I don't believe this gentleman's losing his job. He'll still be employed. It's just a different classification.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't want to, go out here and say that I'm losing. I'm being demoted from my position is being eliminated, and I'm being demoted to a lower position.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
There appear to be no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
But
I'm sorry, Ms. Gray Jackson, I didn't see you in the queue. Would you like him to come back? All right. Anybody else like to testify about anything about budgets?
Good evening. My name is Meg Perdue, last name spelled Perdue.
And if you could pull the mic up a little closer. Thank
right.
you.
And I would like to reiterate the comments and support the comments of the first speaker and respectfully request that the Assembly consider rejecting the proposal to eliminate the 3 full-time recreation specialist position from the Parks and Rec program. I do not agree with the assessment that part-time staff could adequately fulfill the role that is currently taken on by those full-time staff. They provide quality of service, dedication, and a face to programs that allows the public to interface with some extremely popular programs run through those individuals. Tuesday Night Races, which is going on currently, otherwise probably more people would come and speak on that, and kids ski programs. I think the minimal monetary gain from switching from full-time to part-time positions is very short-sighted, and it doesn't adequately address or compare to the investment that these programs make in our community and to our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Billy Ray Powers, Powers. I just can't let this budget cycle go by without having to say something about $250,000 a year cops. You know, I don't have a problem with cops making a decent pay. But they're gaming the system here, man. When a senior cop can take any and all overtime and make $250,000 a year, you know, they retire after 20 at 50% of their last 3 years' pay, some of them. I don't know where the city stands on funding these retirements, but half of $250,000 is $10,000 a month. Now, if you're a cop and you got hired when you were 20 years old, you can retire at 40 and make $10,000 a month. You know, it would be good if everybody could do that. I would be happy if everybody could do it. But it's out of line, man, with what's going on. It's straight up out of line. People are not making that kind of money in this town. I haven't seen any move to curtail overtime. I haven't seen any offer by the union to regulate their membership a little bit and do the right thing. It's time, you know, to look at this. Now, I know there are members here highly funded and basically in the pocket of the policemen's union and other unions. But the right thing to do for the folks here that live here is not have cops after 20 years retiring at 40 and making 10 grand a month for not getting off the couch. That's just one of my little things. I know I only get 3 minutes here, so I'll just drop it at that. I got a lot more to talk about.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Ms. Gray-Jackson has a question for you, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming out this evening. But lately, the police department were recruiting for police officers. Did you apply by any chance? Thank you, Madam Chair.
You want an answer to that? You know, as much as I appreciate the cops, and it is a rough job, I wouldn't want to be one. It is a tough job. But $250,000, you know? I do a tough job too. I've been a certified welder. I've been in the mud for 40 years. and I'll be lucky to retire with maybe $3,000 a month. Not 10, and not at 40. Now, this is in the ditch, grinding and welding. So it's tough, too.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman has a question.
Just to clarify one thing, Mr. Powers, and thank you for coming in your comments. Just to clarify, first of all, you can't be a police officer that I know of anywhere in the U.S. until you're 21, so that gives you to at least 41.
Okay, there you go. I stand corrected.
One thing. And the other thing is that an officer who makes an average salary at the Anchorage Police Department here makes substantially less than that. And so to make $250,000 a year, and I'm going off of the numbers that you gave, not me.
The paper wrote it. It was in the paper.
Then I would think that to earn that, you'd have to be pretty much living at your job. And I don't know of any job that, save the military, that you're really living at the job. Well, maybe perhaps an assembly person, where you're expected to live at your job and keep one pay rate. If it's in the agreement that you pay overtime, that's where the earning starts coming in. So the way to negotiate or remove that cost figure is to increase the staff of full-time employees so you don't have to pay so much overtime. Call people them.
Okay.
Paul, through the chair. Paul, the new cops, you know what they make? Basically, they don't have a retirement.
I get you.
So the union should be like the Three Musketeers, so to speak. You know what I mean? One for all and all for one. But that's not how it is. We got special cops, and we got not so special cops. So we're having trouble hiring cops, maybe because we're hiring not so special cops.
Thank
you know what I mean?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to testify on any of the budgets? Hearing and seeing no one, the budgets on the first public hearing are closed on 14A through G. And at this time, we're going to take our dinner break. We'll be about 20 to 25 minutes. So we're in recess. As item AO 104, it's an ordinance amending Section 6 of the Assembly Ordinance 104, which adopted the Chugach Eagle River Site-Specific Land Use Plan to eliminate some of the rezone requirements for properties identified as Muldrow Street West and Muldrow Street East. If you'd like to testify to us on this matter, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
That item is before us. Mr. Starr.
Just a brief comment. There's a lot of paper, and I really appreciate the staff being so thorough. However, it's a relatively minor impact. It avoids the burden of the municipality going through the rezoning process. I don't think it intentionally bypasses public process in that. It is, as the title speaks, it does modify the land use plan, and we've had that whole area heavily scrutinized. So having the oversight of the mayor on the rezone requirement, it also frees up property that perhaps a developer wouldn't have to undertake significant rezone. Hopefully the land patterns, that would be the only comment I would want to make sure the land patterns stay the same, so we build similar type houses over there. However, I think if the comments on the planning and zoning and the dwelling units per acre, the DUAs, stay in the 3 to 7 number per acre, I think we're going to be great. So I'd urge approval, and I appreciate the diligence and the foresight of the mayor and Ms. Osiander to move it along.
Seeing no one else in queue, please vote. He doesn't appear to be here, so that passes 10-0. The next item before us is 14I. This is AO 105, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 11.10.050 to provide the Transportation Commission authority to establish a fuel surcharge for taxi cab service accompanied by AM 561 and a 105S version. So if you'd like to talk to us on this issue, please come forward. I can see no one. Public hearing is wait a minute. I won't close it. I'll take back that gavel. Come forward.
Sorry, I was a little late. I was on that. On 14I, I would...
In the mic and start with your name and spell your last.
Okay. Mark, M-A-R-K, M-A-R-I-O-N. I believe what we are doing is we are adding a section, I believe it's section number 6, which does allow for the Transportation Commission to recommend a surcharge if cab driver expenses exceed to a point. I see that this definitely is necessary because the thing with the cab drivers is they have what's called independent contracts. So therefore, this is their lifeline and their lifeblood. And if the cost of the gas and the fuel is above that in their expenses, they're not able to take anything home. And some of these cab drivers live on food stamps. And that's no joke. And some of them live on welfare and stuff like that, public assistance. The other thing I'd like to say on this is that private business such as pizza delivery places, restaurants, other service businesses also attack on a service charge as well for delivery services. So why can't taxi cab drivers do the same thing if the expenses are warranted?
Anything else, sir? We have a question for you if you're done.
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay, Mr. Honeman.
Well, Mark, thanks for being here, and I know you were here on a previous legislation for reference cab drivers, so I appreciate your insight, because if I'm not mistaken, you worked for a dispatch company, right? Or had?
I was a former employee of a dispatch company.
Do you know roughly what it is on an average? I know it probably varies a bit, but what is it that a cab driver on these independent contracts, what's their expense outlay? What does it look like? It's like $100 a night? Do they have like a set shift that they pull, and how much it costs them? Do you know roughly?
Well, if a cab driver, let's say, does a 12-hour shift, let's say, because they're only allowed by transportation inspection to do a 12-hour shift. If they go over that, they get fined by the transportation inspector, and that sort of thing. I can also tell you that the way, I should say the way the majority of the cab drivers are, they have to pay lease on that vehicle, so therefore the majority of the cab drivers don't own their vehicle. The other thing is that they also have to pay gas on top of that. And if the gas is higher, because you know how fuel prices can be, like I think the last time I checked it was like $3.97 over at 20th and Muldoon, which is close to where I live. And that sort of thing. And that fluctuates. And the other thing is, most cab drivers, they have to fill the tank at the end of their shift to give it to the next driver. And that could be pretty expensive. That could be anywhere from $60 to $75 a night sometimes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to testify on this matter? All right, hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Flynn.
I'd move the S version.
Second.
The S version is before us. Mr. Flynn, you want to speak to it?
Just real briefly, I think you all saw the question I asked. The way the original draft was written, it was not clear that this surcharge would have to come back to the Assembly for approval within the code. I think we all understood that would in fact be the case, and so we're just trying to clarify that within the code. I would like to thank Mr. Wheeler and Ms. Tucker for working with me on it, and I'll happily defer questions to them.
Thank you. There appear to be no questions. Please vote on the S version. That item passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14J. This is AR 279. It's a resolution approving a letter of agreement between the municipality and the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers, Local Union 1547, clarifying a section of collective bargaining agreement on compensation while in travel status. Would anyone like to speak to us on this? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr?
Mr. Vacalis, when ML&P falls under the jurisdiction of the municipal manager here in a couple weeks, will you have the direct report for the travel requests through your office, or how will that be handled from the municipal?
Yes, sir.
How does this tie into the budget request that's in front of us right now for their enterprise budget? Do you see a budget modification? Are we saving the city money through this action?
I'm not sure one way or the other, Mr. Starr, if we are or not, but what it does do, though, it allows for when we change on the 22nd of November.
Mr. Vaqueros, we can't hear you very well.
When we change on the 22nd of November from the authority to general government, then all of these will receive the scrutiny, like you said, of the municipal manager. Hopefully there'll be a savings. I believe that there'll be an awful lot of
Yeah, and I have the same observation you do when I dug into it and read it a little deeper. I had a chance to do something else on Saturday, but Sunday and Monday I looked at the IBW contract itself, the one that most of us on this body, or some of us on this body, approved, and it actually may set us up for a conflict in the work rules specified in there. And I understand what the letter is supposed to do, but I would want to know also what your policy is going to be when it relates to somebody wanting to depart several days early and have to incur 2 or 3 more nights in hotels.
Well,
how are we going to manage that? Because this specifies only the overtime portion of that.
Right, but there's a big factor that I think is where we're going to receive the savings. Basically, when they become under general government, they'll be going through the cost containment committee as well as myself. And if you look at what has happened over the last couple, 3 years, travel has been significantly reduced within general government. And the parameters that are used by cost containment as well as myself will be an awful lot more scrutiny than what probably has been done in the past.
Well, I don't want to drive grievances up either, but, you know, when I look at the actual letter of agreement, and I do appreciate the opportunity for the Assembly, there was in days past when we never got to see actions like this, so I'll chuckle a little bit on the fact that we're now able to weigh in on it. The second paragraph, when it talks about covered by this agreement, leaves early or extends his travel for his or her personal benefit, and I don't want to read it to you, but this is the only part of this. If this becomes an amended portion of the labor contract, this is the only carrying paragraph that's going to speak this directly to it. And I know you haven't had a chance to look at the IBW contract in that light, but I'm concerned that whether or not this is going to give enough guidance to that cost containment committee, or do we want to look at language that expands and clarifies that so that we can address other things relating to extended travel as opposed to just the overtime. And I'm happy to postpone it if you think that's a necessary atmosphere, or you feel we'll be ready to handle it from all angles of employee leave request.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Starr, that the bottom line is, as Mr. Vaquelos said, quite simply, travel costs will go down because of this agreement. And the good thing is it's agreed to by both sides. It was unclear in the existing agreement just what happened when people were traveling and extended for personal reasons. And so it's really a clarification item. But to the bigger point of savings, I can guarantee you that there will be significant savings when the utilities come on board.
Well, and I don't want to speak out of turn here because the public testimony is still open on the budgets therein, but when you have an ML&P travel budget, 3 times greater than the rest of the municipality, it's a target for somebody like me to look at. So we have a $300,000 plus travel budget supported by some of these IBW contracts, and I will take an amendment to that task for this budget cycle, and hopefully we don't get into a grievance standpoint, but fair warning, appreciate the debate and the discussion. That's all I had.
Thank you. No one else appears to be in line to speak, so please vote. And that matter is approved unanimously. The next item before us is 14K, AR 280, a resolution approving a letter of agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and the Anchorage Police Department Employee Association to participate in the municipality's leave donation program, accompanied by AM 579. Anyone like to speak to this? Please come forward. I'm pausing because I twice gavelled too soon, but it doesn't appear that anybody's coming. So at this time, I'll close that public hearing.
Move approval.
Second.
Seeing no one in queue to speak, please vote. That matter passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14L. This is AR 281. It's a resolution approving a letter of agreement between the municipality and the Public Employees Local 71 to participate in the MOA Leave Donation Program accompanied by AM 580. Anybody like to speak to us on this matter?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a point of order, I think. I want to speak on it, but I'm not certain. I'm assuming it's some type of participation in a leave benefit program. So our funds are being participated in as a community, right? And then the other question I had was, I came to testify on the budget. Did I miss that? And Paul told me. I apologize for that then. Well, if I understand this correctly, all I'm going to say is real quickly, it is my position, continues to be, that we cannot allow any type of public employees union. There can be no health program. There can be no benefits program. There can be no retirement program. And the sooner we come to this reality, so we can adjust to the other needs, the better off we will be. And someone needs to set the lead, the standard, and the bar. And what happens is we need to bring all that back, pay these people a certain amount of wages that are fair, that we all agree to, and that's equitable, and then let them choose somebody for their retirement plan, their health plan, their benefits plan. This has just gone off the edge, and the division now is continuing to divide us by the little moments that you do here form larger blocks that divide us as a nation. And then I don't know if you saw it or not, but if it weren't as nutty as it is now the Pope is calling for a new world order. So, gentlemen, I don't know where we're headed, but I've never seen times like this before, and I'll sit down and thank you for the brief opportunity to weigh in on something I'm not familiar with, but it looks like a duck and appears to be quacking like a duck. Thank you very much.
Mr. Starr has a question for you, sir.
Just 2 points of clarity. This program would allow employees themselves to share leave amongst each other, so perhaps one employee needs to have additional leave to take care for his wife or child that may be sick, so there's no outward cost to the municipality that I was able to find. Perhaps some administrative record keeping. I think you could make a case for that, Mr. Kendall. And also, just to follow up on your attendance here tonight, we have 2 more public opportunities to speak to the budget, and we'd welcome your comments of those. So thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm going to sit down and wait for maybe at the end of the meeting to give a comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Billy Ray Powers, Powers. Thank you for that clarification. Anything we can do to make our life better, and especially for our public employees, that doesn't cost the taxpayer something, I think we should go for it. I always liked the idea, like working 4/10s instead of 5/8s. Things that we can do that don't cost money, let's go for it. Go for this thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed.
Move to approve, or second?
That was moved by Mr. Hall, seconded actually by Mr. Trainee before you spoke, sir. And there is no one in line to speak, so please vote. That item is approved unanimously. We're now at 14M, AR 284. It's a resolution approving an alcohol beverage conditional use for a restaurant eating place use, license number 5103 in the Planned Community District per AO
Waive reading.
46S. This is for the Bridge Restaurant. Oh, and here you are. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Al Levinson, Levinsohn. And I'm here this evening asking your approval for our restaurant eating place license at the Bridge Seafood. If I may take just a moment to explain our concept. We recently took over the old Bridge restaurant on Ship Creek, and we're looking to revamp that to turn it into an iconic seafood destination for local Alaskans and Alaskan visitors in the summertime. Really looking to build up that area down there, along with the Ulu Factory, the Comfort Inn, the Alaska Railroad, to really add a little vibe to that port area. In the off-season, winter months, we're looking to use it as a catering facility, where we'll be offering catering services for weddings, holiday parties, business meetings, luncheons, fundraisers, that type of thing. So we're very excited at the opportunity. And with this restaurant eating place license, we'd like to offer Alaskan crafted beers and things, and using local products in our mix. So,
Very good.
Yeah.
Mr. Honeman has a question.
I just wanted to say, I think it sounds like you got a good business management recipe to hopefully this thing will succeed. I'm excited for the opportunity. And did you say you're going to be using local breweries? You're not necessarily intending to create a microbrewery or anything?
No, absolutely not. No, the plan for Bridge Seafood is to utilize all Alaskan products as much as possible. Alaskan seafood, definitely. Alaskan produce. Of course, we'll use a local coffee roaster, Alaskan beers, and that type of thing. So
perfect. Sounds like a good place. Thank you.
There appear to be no other questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else, public hearing is closed.
Second.
That was moved by Ms. Johnston, seconded by Mr. Honeman. Mr. Starr.
Not sure who could answer the question. When Mr. Coffey was here on the body, he could answer it. But the conditional use permit, and maybe just generally to the administration or legal here, the conditional use permit under number 5 on page 2 speaks to all employees having the requirement for training in the TAMS liquor serving. I don't remember it being all employees. Is it? So even if you have underage servers, they're going to be exposed to the TAM training, or do you have clarity when it says all employees?
Mr. Weaver's coming forward.
Madam Chair, Mr. Starr, I don't have the statute in front of me. Perhaps Ms. Tucker might. I saw her reaching for something, but I believe it's only those individuals handling alcohol. So we may have used different wording in this particular document, but that's my understanding.
Well, I think it's onerous to the applicant to have that language in there, and I guess I wasn't prepared to amend it. However, I think that if he's held to that standard, it may cause him challenges both with training and otherwise. So I'm going to probably propose an amendment here to number 5 when I know what the statute language says. Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. There appears to be no one else in queue. Do you need some time, Ms.?
Well, I think it's prudent to modify that. If I could either modify it now or when I know the language. And I know that the spirit of that is to reference those serving and not, or those in contact with. I need some more time. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would the body object if we move this down the agenda so Mr. Starr has some more time?
I'll move to roll this to the end of the new public hearing agenda.
And I'll second that.
Is there any objection to doing that? All right. We'll change the order of the day then to move it down a bit. Thank you. All right. With that, I will open the public hearing on 14N. This is AR 285. It's a resolution approving an alcohol beverage conditional use to allow catered events by various licensees with a beverage dispensary license.
Waive reading.
This is basically for the Denina Convention Center. Anybody like to speak to us on this matter?
Billy Ray Powers, Powers. I took my daughter down to get her a car in Fort Collins, Colorado, where she's going to university. And we had the opportunity to go up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is pretty much Redneckville. But in the middle of downtown in Cheyenne on a Saturday night was a great big event where they were doing barbecue cook-off. And they were serving beer, and there were live bands, and there were families in the city center dancing. Parents could have a beer or two, and they really had fun, man. And I had to ask the cop, I said, now my daughter's not 21, can we go in there? He looked at me like, hey, where are you from, man? Of course you can go in there. That's what we do. They had fun, and they had no problems. I thought, man, in Alaska, there'd have to be a beer tent. There'd have to be all kinds of rules. You definitely couldn't bring your children in there. And it was nice. I mean, Cheyenne, Wyoming, in summer on a Saturday night, all the folks are in town having fun. So I don't have a problem with this, and this public drinking. I know there can be problems, but at the same time, it brings a little civility to a community. I really enjoyed Cheyenne. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Paul, middle initial D, Kendall, citizen of Anchorage, Alaska, and I just want to get this literature before you, but I would just carefully remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that here we go again, the inconsistencies and the contradictions here. You all know what alcohol is doing to our society. Now, I'm very concerned about the fact that you won't legalize marijuana, but by God, you allow a substance that will poison, kill, and maim, and injure, and incest and rape and plunder and pillage, and then turn around and chastise somebody else. And yet you end up giving this alcohol availability to the very center under which we create. And I think this inconsistency and contradiction really has to be more highlighted. And in all due respect to my Mr. Powers here, the distinguished gentleman that just prior to me, I've been to Cheyenne days. I am a small town country boy where we carry 22s and rifles and stay out all night and have the cops chase us. And the point is, the reason you can do those things, I would remind Mr. Powers, is because we have community and we have accountability. When you have community and accountability and family, you can quickly correct those problems. But when you're a large area like this, filled with corruption and differences and lack of communications, you cannot always do those things that are ingrained in the goodness, I think, of all of us and well-intended. Alcohol hurts. And on the one hand, you're okaying it for money of all things, and then on the next hand, you're going to give some money to somebody for being injured by it. And thanks again for the quick opportunity. I'm going to stick around to try to address something a little bit different about something more positive. Thank you.
Anyone else like to testify? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed.
Move approval.
Second.
That was moved by Mr. Flynn and seconded by, I guess, I recognize Mr.
I think that was
Holman.
the previous motion that sort of still stuck. So.
Okay, well, then I lost who made the motion originally.
Move to approve.
Mr. Hall made the motion, and Mr. Honeman, did you second it?
I did.
All right. Mr. Starr, you want to speak to this?
Well, I did. This is actually where I picked up the note on the conditional use permit. I had some general questions also about perhaps the liability that the municipality may be taking on. Mr. Vikalis, there's events that are managed through the Denina Center that aren't under the oversight of SMG, or does SMG have oversight over everything that happens at the Denina Center? And let's put it in this way, in relation to serving alcohol as you see it.
SMG.
SMG would have it entirely?
And then remember, they also get their guidance from ACVB as well.
I appreciate that system of control. I guess where I'm at is the petitioner's the MOA on this one, and again, clause number 5 says that all employees will be trained. I'm not sure if legal has an opinion on how to change that language.
Through the chair, assembly members, the reason the Muni is the applicant because we're the owner.
Well, I know that. My observation was Muni is the applicant, and conditional use number 5 says that all employees will be trained.
Right, but that's going to refer to the SMG management and the employees of any entity that uses the space.
Are you sure this is the right way to word the conditional use?
I believe it is. Through the chair, Mr. Starr, what we have to deal with is a code section in Title 10 that imposed a number of conditions on alcohol service in the downtown community council district. You might remember there's some limitations in package size and so forth. One of the provisions in 1050-045 states, if I can find the location here.
Let me help you out here, Mr. Wheeler. That applies to package stores only.
Yeah. Well, let me take a rough hack at it because I'm not a lawyer,
You're
but
right.
I'll make
So,
an amendment
if
here.
I might, there's a couple more provisions. Okay, one of them says that under Muni Code, we have to demonstrate, the applicant has to demonstrate the ability to comply with the training requirements, and under state law, those training requirements state that the licensee who sells or serves alcoholic beverages and their agents and employees who sell or serve alcoholic beverages or check the identification of a patron have to complete the alcohol server education course. So, the licensee who sells or serves, their agents and employees who sell or serve, or check identification have to comply with the education course.
Okay.
Fairly limited group in that sense, if you will.
Well, I don't see it that way. I see somebody getting really busy on the night of an event and grabbing the guy from the back that's the dishwasher and says, hey, come on out front here and help us do traffic control. And the beers get handed down the line, and the guy continues to hand the beer down the line, and he's not TAMS carded. So
They would be out of compliance with the conditions of the
I
license.
understand that. So this would be my amendment to number 5. All employees in direct contract with the service of alcohol, comma, will be trained in accordance with alcoholic beverage control license. So again, referring it would be all employees in direct contact with the service of alcohol, the serving of alcohol, comma. Let it die.
Well, wait a minute, Mr.
Through the
Wheeler
chair,
was wanting
Mr.
to...
Starr, well, I appreciate your goal.
Normally a motion gets a second, Mr. Wheeler. We didn't have it, so there's no...
I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't realize, I thought you were asking the question of, is this wording appropriate? Was that a motion, sir?
Well, we need to produce appropriate wording. If you're going to train every employee in here, we've got to come up with something a little more applicable so that, you know, the employees don't have a rebellion on us because they get fined.
Okay.
So it's a valid point, and I don't want to make light of it.
I'll second it.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Mr. Wheeler, did you want to speak to it?
To the chair, Mr. Starr, if I might make a suggestion.
Please.
If we simply mirror the state law.
You want to put it in accordance with AS something then? Would that work in accordance with a reference? There is nothing right now.
Yes, sir.
AS something, section something, could you help me with that?
AS 4.21.025A.
Could you repeat the number, sir, the site?
Section 4.21.025A.
Yeah, we call it making sausage on the floor here. So in the context of the wording, can you suggest wording to tie that AS section into the clause on Section 5? All employees shall comply with AS 402-205A. Will that work?
I'm sorry, I missed the part after you said all.
All employees shall comply as required. I mean, it's too broad the way it's written right now. I want to focus it down.
I would say the licensee shall comply.
Mr. Wheeler, I saw you coming forward. Did you want to participate in this conversation?
In line 11, then, will it be the licensee shall demonstrate compliance?
Mr. Starr, would you like an opportunity to go over there and talk to them, and maybe we could move this one to the end, too? I'm not sure how to
Close to the
proceed.
end.
I know we're close to the end. Or we can declare an at ease. Do you want to do an at ease?
I'd like to fix it. It's prudent. We got a lot of shows and events coming up that make sense to get this right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've had a request for about a 3 or 4 minute at ease. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're going to be at short at ease.
Amendment, motion to make an amendment on line, or section 5, which is going to be line 9 on page 2.
Mr. Starr, a little bit of housekeeping first. If there's any objection, you want to get rid of the amendment you made a few minutes
Yeah, I
ago.
better do that.
All right. Is there any objection if we don't pursue the amendment that was made and seconded before the body? All right. This is a new amendment. Go ahead, Mr. Starr.
Basically, line 9 would delete the word all, capitalize the word employees. The sentence will remain and read the same.
Would you read the whole thing, sir?
Employees will be trained in accordance with the Alcohol Beverage Control Board's Liquor Server Awareness Training Program as described in AS 4.21.025, period.
All right. That was the amendment, to add that as described. Mr. Starr, I think you better read it one more time.
Sure. Lines 9 and 10 are affected here. Employees will be trained in accordance with the Alcohol Beverage Control Board's Liquor Server Awareness Training Program as described in AS 4.21.025, period.
All right.
Second.
Now, there's some people in queue. Mr. Trainee, did you want to speak to this amendment?
Not this one, but I have a question for Dennis, so.
Okay, can we finish this first?
Yes,
sir?
ma'am.
All right. Mr. Wheeler, do you want to say anything? You're on my board here. Nothing further?
Thank you.
Okay. So it appears that no one wants to speak to the amendment. Is there objection to the amendment? Seeing no objection, that amendment is incorporated. Anything else, Mr. Starr?
That's all.
All right. Mr. Trainee, back to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Dennis, I gave you a question earlier, if you could give me an answer to it. I want to know if, in fact, by giving a liquor license to the Denida Center, we then run into a problem with people that come with concealed carry weapons, because I don't want to see them have one event in one room and put the entire building off limits to people carrying concealed carry, given the amount of people in Alaska that carry.
Through the chair, Mr. Trainee, I'm sorry, I just have not been able to find the sections I'm looking for. I cannot answer your question at this time.
Madam Chair, I'm not willing to vote on this until I get that answer from Dennis. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Would the body...
Madam Chair, I'd like to debate that topic just for a minute. Mr. Trainee didn't put a motion on the floor, but I think Section 6 of the conditional use, Mr. Trainee, will clarify that. It's a broad-reaching statement, of course, but it puts the burden both on the operator as well as the gun carrier.
But I just want to make sure that what doesn't happen has happened in the past, Bill, where they put stickers on the whole building and say you can't carry. I want to make absolutely sure that's not where we're going with this.
Well, I think
I have no problem not letting people carry where they're consuming alcohol. But if, in fact, the result of this is for SMG to put their little labels like they have on the Sullivan Sports Arena.
Yeah, well, again, the compliance with current, future federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including thereof, I think is the catch-all phrase there. And if we overread...
I know, but I want an attorney to tell me.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, I'm not, but I believe Section 6 covers legal
And
precedent.
if Destin agrees with you, fine.
All right, gentlemen, what I suggest is we give Mr. Wheeler a little time, and if there is no objection, could we deal with 14O and 14P and then come back to both of these alcohol ones? Would that be all right? Seeing no objection, can I just do it? All right. So at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing on 14O. This is AR 283. It's a resolution appropriating $199,000 from the South Central Foundation to the Federal Grants Fund.
Waive reading.
This is to fund the Emergency Alcohol Community Service Program, Anchorage Safety Patrol. If you'd like to speak to that, please come forward.
Paul, middle initial D, Kendall again here, and I'm not going to be here long. And by the way, just for the relief of you, I'll be leaving this coming Sunday. Won't be back for a few months, if that's any assistance to you. I guess my concern is this, that I see $199,000. I disagree with this. I think it's terribly inappropriate. But I don't see the rest of the information, the other money with it, and I don't see the terms and conditions of the grant. And someone told me the other day I move in a lot of varied circles of influence and people, and I was told there were 7,000 nonprofit organizations in Alaska, and somewhere between 6 and 16 board members. And I'm telling you, gentlemen and ladies, we got a battle coming. You people, I think most of you are in denial and just think it's just going to roll over another inflationary moment in history. I think you're dead wrong about what's coming. And I just look for bodies like this where we're close and personal and know each other, that where you have a chance to allow people like me to make these comments, but more importantly, you have a chance to be great leaders. Just missing this moment. And I think this is another exemplary moment, and it isn't against the South Central Foundation. It's about the purpose and the funding. And I think someone was just raped by some guy that did alcohol, that worked for this, or she did alcohol, and he did this, and these things are interconnected, and somebody has to begin to rise. I came down for the budget, but while I'm here, what the heck. So anyway, thank you again for the brief comments, and I'll sit down. And again, I do want the audience participation. That's why I handed out the prior sheets. Thank you.
Anyone else on this item regarding the community service program? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
That was moved by Mr. Honeman, seconded by Mr. Hall. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. That item was approved unanimously. We're now at 14P. This is AR 286. It's a resolution appropriating $385,000 from the Heritage Land Bank fund balance to the Heritage Land Bank operating budget as a contribution for the Reeve Boulevard remediation project, accompanied by AM 591. Anyone like to speak to it?
I guess I will. I'm not too familiar with this thing, but it seems to me it's been going.
Start off with your name. I'm sorry.
Catherine Hicks.
We know you, but still.
It seems to me it's been going on. I mean, this is a lot of money. From what I hear, this project has been going on for quite some time. Are we going to fund the total of it, or are we just going to keep dripping in more thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars? It seems to me when they start a project like this, they ought to be held accountable for what they're spending on it and not just keep coming back and asking for more and more and more all the time. That's all I have to say on it. I wish you'd give it some consideration as to how many times these projects can keep coming back and getting more money.
Just a second. Ms. Johnston.
Excuse me, do you know what this project is?
I don't know anything about it except that it's been going on for a long time and we've been funding it for a while.
I'm not sure if the administration, would the manager like to address this project?
Certainly. This project is a result of a construction project that occurred on Glen Highway, property that the municipality owned, and dirt material from that site was moved to Reeves Boulevard. When that was moved, it was determined that it was contaminated soil, and as a result of that, the site at Reeves Boulevard was contaminated. Now, this was in conjunction with the Glen Square project, when they built Glen Square and the mall there. So as a result of that, it took some time to determine the extent of the contamination and the types of contamination. So what you may have seen is different AMs, assembly memorandums that came in explaining what the situation was, and also authorizing the department to go out and get a contract to have someone not only make the due diligence inspection to determine what's there and how to basically clean it up, but also another contract to have a company come in and clean it up. What you see right now is that as a result of the cleanup, it was determined that the extent of the contamination was much more extensive than was originally anticipated. So as a result of that, and when they uncovered more contaminated material that could have been there for some time, not just associated with the transfer of material from Glen Square, it was determined it would cost more money. And as a result of that, and because of the order that we're under from the EPA to get it cleaned up, we're asking the Assembly to appropriate this amount of money so that we can finish that project.
From what I understand, those private property owners, in order to sell anything, we have to pay for the cleanup of our own land. So this is, you're saying the municipality is selling this land for the fancy shopping center out there. And now the municipality has to pay for it because they own the land. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that the municipality certainly is one of the responsible parties because the municipality had the land to begin with that was originally contaminated. However, the municipality will be, once this site is cleaned up, going after all of the responsible parties to share the load of the cost. But because of the order that we're under from the EPA to get the site cleaned up, we're providing the money up front to get this thing cleaned up, and then we'll use whatever recourse is available to us to go after the other parties.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to say no, the public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Mr. Trombley, you want to speak to this?
I do. I just want to ask Mr. Vacalis, what is the time frame? I mean, have you communicated with the environmental company?
They're doing the due diligence. I received a report, and honest to gosh, I haven't had a chance to read it. So they went in and they looked at it, the staff did, and they gave me an interim report, and I have not had a chance to look at it yet.
I understand. I appreciate it. I just want to make sure things are progressing in that manner.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in line to speak, please vote. That item is approved unanimously. We're going back on our agenda. Mr. Starr, can we do 14M now?
That'd be great.
All right. We're back at 14M, and if you recall, I guess, Mr. Starr, you have the floor on this. You were
Yeah,
about
I'd just like to make a motion to amend Section 5 of this application for conditional use by the bridge.
Second.
The same way you did before?
Yeah, I can read it into the record if you want.
Please, sir.
Line number 9 and 10 will be affected by this wording. Employees will be trained in accordance with the Alcohol Beverage Control Board's Liquor Server Awareness Training Program as designated in AS 4.21.025.
All right. That motion was made. I'm sorry, I heard a second, but I didn't get. Mr. Honeman seconded it?
And I just want to speak to that process
ahead,
a little
sir.
bit. In deference to Mr. Gutierrez, who was a stout observer of liquor server behaviors and the public service that went along, or the public obligation to treat those with respect as well as enforce the laws. What I've been doing in my community is looking for these very documents. They're supposed to be posted, and they actually give us a good historical carry forward of what previous assembly members may have done to restrict and care for the liquor service in their community. My Walmart out in Eagle River, for example, posts theirs, and this body puts significant restrictions on outdoor advertising and hours of service and things such as that. So I can, at a minute, and so can the public, go seek this document out, which is supposed to be publicly posted, and see what are you to comply with. So, that's why I'm making hay. The audience and the record keepers may say, hey, what's the big point? Well, first is the petitioner shouldn't be burdened with the language that could potentially be interpreted as training all employees. And that's a Liquor Control Board enforcement officer could go in there and say, your guy was out on the floor, he doesn't have his TAM card. Why not? That's onerous to that. The municipalities one on the previous action is somewhat unrelated, but this one I believe is important for the public trust, and I think I wanted the conditional use permit to read accordingly so that we can all see that and the public is best served by what we mean by that. Whether they understand AS 4.21.025, I don't know, but in reading that's the specification that talks about employees in contact with alcohol, and it's a little clearer. So the burden's clearly on the petitioners and the employees serving, but the public needs to feel confident that we've done our job. So thank you.
Is there objection from the body to this amendment? Seeing no objection, the amendment is incorporated into the main motion on the Bridge Restaurant. So at this time, let's vote on the main motion as amended, please. That is approved unanimously, and I see the applicant had, there you are. Good luck on your business, sir. Thank you. All right, we're now at 14N, back again, and there is a motion on the floor, if you recall, and an amendment. And Mr. Trainee, you have the floor at this point.
Dennis, have you been able to figure out the answer to the question yet?
Through the chair, Mr. Trainee, there's a state statute. It's AS 61-220, misconduct involving weapons in the fifth degree. Under A2, it is misconduct to knowingly possess a loaded firearm on the person in any place where intoxicating liquor is sold for consumption on the premises.
So that in effect would put the whole Denina Center off limits to the carrying of concealed carry weapons if they're serving alcohol in any room in that building?
Yes, it could. The question I cannot answer for you now is whether or not the state and the state prosecutor's office would view one event that provides alcohol as somehow distinct and separate from another, either in time or place.
How long would it take to get an answer to that question? Do we have any idea?
No idea, sir.
Here's the crux of the problem, ma'am. I'd want to postpone this item until our next meeting to give the administration time to get that question answered, because otherwise I foresee a time in which we're going to see little labels put on the United Center that you can't carry concealed. A lot of our people in this town legitimately carry concealed carry weapons.
Is that a motion?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
I'll second.
All right, that motion is seconded. The motion before us is postponement. Mr. Starr, you were in queue. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I don't actually think it's necessary. I guess, the postponement is the question on the floor for debate, but the bigger picture is there may be appropriate times when you shouldn't have weapons in the audience. I go to the Warren Miller movies at the PAC, and they serve alcohol, for example, and some people come in inebriated. So I guess the concealed carry rights of gun owners and those that want to carry them in concealment have that right, but they don't give up the right to perhaps follow the guidelines and the laws of public space. So I'm for that, but I don't think my vote would change if we delayed or otherwise. So I'm going to speak against delay.
Mr. Flynn? Oh, you just pulled yourself out. Did you still want to speak or not?
Good.
Ms. Johnston?
To the administration, what kind of exposure do we have as far as events at the Denina Center by postponing?
You may recall that this body approved a temporary conditional use permit. There was no time frame attached to the temporary nature of that permit.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Johnson? Back to you, Mr. Trini.
Just that since we've got the temporary conditional use permit in effect, there's no foul in simply postponing this to our next meeting. What I don't want to do is put that entire building off limits, and I think there's a lot of concealed carry individuals in Anchorage that will be here just telling us, why the heck did you do that to put the whole building off limits? And I've seen them when they came to this building and ripped the signs off the wall, because we used to have the signs here in the building you couldn't carry. So let's not get into that now.
Mr. Wheeler?
Madam Chair, with all due respect to Mr. Trainee, I don't see any way for this office to get an answer out of the state in 2 weeks.
Well, let's try first 2 weeks and then see from there.
All right, the motion before us is to continue this to our next meeting. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'm going to put it up. Please vote on continuing to our next meeting. And that matter is continued to our next meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. We are now, I do want to remind you we have an executive session scheduled. This is audience participation, though. If you'd like to speak to us on a matter not on our agenda, please come forward.
Paul, middle initial D, Kendall. And first I came to talk about the budget, was going to try to move these in, but I apologize for being late. I'm going to move very quickly because there's no clock for me to see a time or gauge. You have before you 3 pieces of paper, 3 documents. Thank you for allowing me to wedge those in prior to the last moment. I'm going to go very quickly. The first one is, I reverbed this a little bit, calling for legislation about illegal aliens in my community. And through the chair, I left Mr. Flynn off for a specific reason, and it wasn't incompetency. Setting that document aside as a matter of public record to refer to at a later date, the next document calls for an all-white male meeting. And you have that before you for several reasons, but the primary one is that if you're going to put something on me, you should be man enough to be able to point out its origin. That's number one. As a matter of record, I am the point of origin at the request of several people, but the point is that it's a well-intended moment. I went to Ms. Murkowski's meeting last night, and it's clear now the politicians want to tell us something. What they don't want to hear is the long list of things that we all are concerned with, and I'm very concerned, very, very concerned we're not having that moment, and that's what the intentions are behind that, and I hope nothing else would be implied or inferred. And by the way, I sent Mr. Mittman, the ACLU, a copy of that. Now, the last one you have is an update on this cold fusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I just can't, this is just staggering to an older male dog like me who's used to hunting data and tracking and trailing. You have to get into this and look at this. This is just a marvelous discussion. If you can understand the world changing almost overnight, they have what they call a singularity theory. I'm going to try to hurry here, but I hate the motor mouth, but I just don't know if you'll probe me with questions. But they actually they're speculating that they can move these units, these cold fusion units, which are getting 6 to 30 times the power out they put in clean energy. They think they can get market penetration within 3 years of 25%. That's huge. Huge, gentlemen. And you should see some of the brilliant minds in this discussion. I am just staggered by this. And where you come into play at this is this. When I see you spending hundreds and millions of dollars for some fiasco after another, or a dock or some road you can't eat or clothe your family with, you should be flying Mr. Rossi and his team in from Bologna, Italy and Greece, along with Mr. Krivitz, one of his staunch opponents, and having them come before us on camera to explain to this how fast they can go into production with these things. They think they can do 300,000 of these units a year. That's just the residential model. The commercial model will be tested on the 28th of this month. Very big moments are at hand here. But if you bring these people in, our children will be able to see this, and you, along with our children, will be able to prep for that new direction because we're in such a unique location. And when you begin to look at that dynamics, this is just beyond belief and what we could do. And I would hope that you would not only bring in this cold fusion team, but we're now seeing all sectors, but the cold fusion will just trump everything.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to us on non-agenda?
Billy Ray Powers, Powers. Now that we're coming into the season of the budget and that, 2 out of every 3 of our tax dollars goes to the schools. And I came and testified one time about Debbie was the go-to person 25 years ago when I was making decisions on where my kids ought to go to school. And now it's on the internet, so we have a report card that you can go to and see how the schools are doing on standardized testing and such. I find that a side matter is I have spent 52 student years driving my kids, I have a large family, out of my neighborhood to schools where they have a chance. Okay, I kind of feel that as a taxpayer, I should be able to send my child to my neighborhood school and hope that they might even get possibly an average education. It's not happening here. So I look at it further. I talked to Debbie. She said, well, with No Child Left Behind, your child can be bused to another area if your school is not getting it done. So I checked into that. Your child can indeed be bused to another school, but the other school that it gets bused to, your child can get bused to, is a school that meets what they call AYP. That doesn't mean that school's getting it done. That means that they had adequate yearly progress. They still may be in the 33 percentile nationwide, but they made AYP. Okay, so I looked into it a little further, and I believe, as the policemen's union has our special people and our not so special people, so does the NEA. The NEA has tenured teachers who make right at $100,000 a year if they've been there a long time. They got new teachers that only make about $34,000 as starting teachers. So what happens is because these teachers on seniority are allowed to take the positions that come available according to seniority, say a position comes open in North Mountain View, very few tenured teachers are going to take that position in North Mountain View because it's going to reflect on their teaching. And in fact, they can be reprimanded for not getting it done. Could I speak a little longer on this, just short?
Summarize.
In summary, a teacher an opening that might come in Bear Valley. We got the uplanders and we got the lowlanders. The position that might come available in Bear Valley, many teachers, tenured teachers, would like to have that position because Bear Valley is in about the 98th percentile nationwide. It makes them look really good. And they have really good kids to work with.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing? The final thing here is $100,000 a year. Bear Valley's budget is $3.6 million a year. Airport Heights School is $1.8 million a year.
Thank you, sir.
There's disparity.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you.
Anybody else on non-agenda item? Are you getting up, sir? Okay. Seeing no one else, at this point, Mr. Hall, did you want to make a motion?
Just want to wish Mr. Kendall safe travels.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Hall?
Yes, Madam Chair, I actually have a question to ask of Mr. Wheeler. Do you have information regarding pending litigation against the municipality that you'd like to share with us?
Through the chair, Mr. Hall, I do. As the Assembly may recall, we've had a few work sessions, generally near first quarter or during the budget process, where we discuss with you claims that are pending either in litigation or could be litigation. We try to cover what our strategies are, how much exposure there is for the municipality, and that kind of conversation should not be held in public session because it would tend to damage our negotiation position and the finances of the municipality.
Very well. With that said, I move to go into executive session to discuss municipalities' exposure, strategy, and status in pending litigation cases and liability claims, all of which, if immediately disclosed, would clearly adversarially affect the finances of the municipality.
Second.
With that, seeing no objection, we are going to go in a recess at executive session. We will come back here after we're done.
I move that those tapes be held in confidence until all those cases have been litigated and settled.
Second.
Is there any objection to that? All right. Seeing none, that's what we'll do. We are now basically, are there any assembly comments before we get a motion to adjourn? Seeing Mr. Flynn wave goodbye.
Motion to adjourn? Move to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned.
Good night.
Thank you.